And good evening, everyone. I'm Phil Lipof in for Lindsay Davis tonight. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're following that decision to postpone the FDA review of Pfizer's vaccine for children as young as 6 months of age to wait for more data. But we do need to begin tonight with that dire warning by the U.S. government about Ukraine, telling all Americans there to get out immediately. Their words, saying Russia could invade at any time. 3,000 more American troops now headed to Eastern Europe. And tonight, additional Russian ships have arrived in the Black Sea for naval exercises that are effectively blockading Ukraine. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan addressed the increasingly grave situation late today, detailing the credible prospect Russian military action could take place before the end of the Olympics. President Biden, though, is hoping to dial back the tensions a bit in a phone call with President Putin tomorrow. The last time the leaders spoke, December 30th. We are standing by to talk with former ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, to see if he thinks any diplomatic off-ramps are still even available. But first, ABC News Live anchor Terry Moran leads us off from Kyiv tonight.
At the White House today, the urgent new warning. Russia could attack Ukraine at any time over the next several days.
There is a credible prospect that a Russian military action would take place even before the end of the Olympics.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan saying that while the U.S. has not concluded that Vladimir Putin has given the actual order to invade Ukraine, the time for U.S. citizens there to get out is now.
We want to be crystal clear on this point. Any American in Ukraine should leave as soon as possible, and in any event in the next 24 to 48 hours.
And Sullivan warned that U.S. troops would not be used to evacuate American citizens. The dire assessment of the crisis comes a day after President Biden offered this warning about how fast the situation could deteriorate.
We're dealing with one of the largest armies in the world. This is a very different situation, and things could go crazy quickly.
Another ominous sign, talks between Russia and Ukraine have all but collapsed in Berlin. After 9 hours of negotiation, the two sides couldn't even agree to a joint statement. It comes as the Russians conducted their second day of massive war games around much of the Ukrainian frontier and sent more warships into the Black Sea. In response to the daily buildup of Russian forces, the U.S. sent 90 tons of military aid to Ukraine just today, including more Javelin anti-tank missiles, as well as ordering 3,000 more soldiers from the 82nd Airborne to leave Fort Bragg for Poland. American F-16s also arrived in Romania today as U.S. forces continue to bolster NATO's eastern flank. But the White House insists no U.S. soldier will step foot in Ukraine to fight. For Americans who live here, the call for them to leave is hard. 25-year-old American teacher Aaron Starr, who has a job and a Ukrainian girlfriend here in Kyiv, told us he won't evacuate yet.
It's hard to leave your life. Like, obviously, if there's an actual war, I'll leave, okay? I'm not going to live in a war zone. But in advance of that, it's hard to leave.
And Terry joins us now from Ukraine. Terry, the warning about the threat of Russian invasion has taken on new urgency today. Tell us what's driving that and also how Russia is responding.
Well, Phil, what is driving it, according to National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in that briefing, he said the new urgency is based on, quote, what we are seeing on the ground and what our intelligence analysts have picked up, clearly indicating this is not a guess or an assessment by, intelligence analysts, that this, whether through human sources or signals intelligence, they believe some kind of insight into what's going on inside the Kremlin. Now, how is Russia responding? Well, the foreign ministry spokesman for the Kremlin has said that this is all, quote, hysteria. And he said something interesting. He said that this is because the Anglo-Saxons want war at any price. And he said this is all aimed at discrediting Russia's legitimate security demands in Europe, given the expansion of NATO. And that is what we have from the Russians tonight. Phil?
Terry Moran from Ukraine tonight. Thank you. Okay, so for more now on this tenuous situation, we bring in former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor. Sir, thanks so much for taking the time with us tonight. We really do appreciate it.
Glad to be here, Phil.
Okay, so right off the bat, the White House says that President Biden and President Putin will have a phone conversation tomorrow, as President Biden has ordered another 3,000 soldiers to Poland. What do you think that says about how likely it is that Russia is going to invade Ukraine?
Phil, the likelihood is high. President Putin, apparently, according to Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, has not yet made a decision. So there's a chance that he could still reconsider. He has clearly moved all of the weapons and troops, ships and supplies to the front lines. He's clearly ready to do this. However, the cost of doing this, the price that he personally and Russian people more generally will pay are just amazing. So for him to take this decision is irresponsible in my view, but he might do this. He's invaded before. We have to be ready, but there is also the chance that he could be looking for a way out.
Well, so let's go back to that high-stakes phone call tomorrow, then. We also understand that French President Emmanuel Macron is going to speak with President Putin tomorrow. How can President Biden even push for de-escalation at this point? Countries are ordering citizens to leave Ukraine. Do sanctions even matter anymore?
They absolutely do. They absolutely do matter. And it's not just the sanctions, Phil. I mean, that's a big thing. President Putin needs to be concerned about the effect on Russia, on the Russian economy, and on everyday Russians. I mean, these sanctions we're talking about will hit every Russian. Everybody who has a bank account in Russia will be affected by this. So President Putin has to take those into account. It's not just the sanctions. He also has to worry, President Putin has to worry that an attack, that an invasion of his neighbor, Ukraine, will not be popular in Russia. Russian citizens generally have a good view, a good attitude towards Ukraine. And when they hear President Putin talking about invading them, they may take to the streets. They may oppose this idea. They may make it clear that they don't support this kind of invasion. It may destabilize President Putin's own regime. So he's got a lot to think about, and the sanctions are one of them.
All right, so let's go with he hasn't made a final decision yet. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan talked about the defensive deployment of U.S. forces. Help us understand what that means and how it's different from an offensive deployment, because we understand these troops are not going there to fight, but what happens if there's an invasion?
So these troops are going there to reinforce NATO allies on the eastern flank of NATO. And so these 3,000 troops and more coming will augment the 60,000 troops that are already there and being moved towards the east, toward East European allies. Those are defensive positions. They are defending against any kind of invasion. But if President Putin decides to send his tanks west across the border into Ukraine, that movement is toward NATO. So the NATO allies have to be very ready, very concerned to be prepared for that kind of an attack. And if that happens, then we'll be prepared.
I don't know if you've seen the statement, but we got a statement from President Putin in response to the troops that are heading over to Poland. He says that the West wants war. So that you go back and forth with these comments. What's the possibility of Russia engaging in this so-called false flag operation that we've heard so much about to create a pretense for war? Wouldn't the world see right through that? I mean, at least our country has been throwing up red flags in that direction.
Absolutely. That's exactly the purpose, Phil, of releasing that intelligence. Normally, the intelligence agencies are hesitant to release this kind of information. But this time, for exactly the reason that you say, the intelligence agencies allowed that information to be made public so that the world knows, we know, the Ukrainians know, and the Russians know that has been exposed. And that false flag, that having Russian special operatives inside Ukraine attacking Russians to give the excuse, to give the rationale for the Russians then to invade into Ukraine. So that would be Russian people attacking Russian soldiers to give the excuse for them to go into Ukraine. That's now been exposed. So that was a very good move.
Ambassador, finally, I have to get your expertise on this. With everything that has played out to date, with all of the Russian troops hearing that President Putin has what he needs for a full-scale invasion that would cost an awful lot of lives, what's the off-ramp for him now? Legitimately, what can he say to save face after setting up like this?
First of all, it's not our business to save his face. But second of all, he has said over and over, and his foreign minister has said over and over, that he doesn't intend to invade Ukraine. He said this, so he could point to that. He could point and say, look, I never intended to invade Ukraine. What I need, what I wanted, and now what I've succeeded in getting is the West, in particular the United States, has finally taken my security concerns seriously. And not only are they taking them seriously, they're going to sit down and negotiate hard treaties that will mean that their B-52 bombers never fly within 12 miles of the Russian borders again, or that they will never put missiles into Ukraine that can threaten Moscow in 7 minutes. He can say that we are finally taking his security concerns seriously. He can tell the Russian people that he won, and he never intended to do it anyway.
Right. And no doubt he would call that a win. He certainly has the attention of the world on him right now during the Olympics. Ambassador Taylor, thank you so much for your insights. We always appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.